As a welcome break from the monotonous California routes, Dovetail have returned to Massachusetts for what is currently their latest American add-on in Train Sim World. These are my 2 cents on the unimaginatively titled MBTA Commuter DLC, and for once, I can say that I was actually somewhat excited for a US route in TSW, but made sure not to get my hopes up too high. This is Dovetail Games after all. The route was originally scheduled for release on the 29th of October 2024, the same day when I chased KiwiRail's Transalpine passenger train from Sandy Knolls to Greymouth, with DFB 7241 on the point. Thinking back to the MBTA route, its release was delayed until the 12th of November, and it's a very rare thing for DTG to actually push the release date back. Come to think of it, why did they not do that for Train Sim World 5 itself? I reckon that would have made the release of WCML South and Frankfurt to Fulda less disastrous, since the developers would have had more time to fix the numerous flaws with both routes. They should not have been released in the state that they were in. In any case, the MBTA route is pretty expensive with a full price of $40 US or 56 New Zealand dollars. This doesn't really surprise me anymore, although I still wish the newer routes weren't this bloomin' expensive. There was an option to pre-order this route, but I didn't bother doing that this time because, for whatever reason, there was no discount, not even a feeble 10% off. And even though I bought the route on launch day, that doesn't mean I automatically think the price is okay or that I have to shut up and stop criticizing the price. It doesn't work like that. The Framingham and Worcester line runs for 44.2 miles, or 71.1 kilometres, from Boston south to Worcester, with 16 intermediate stations. And yet the download size is a staggering 8.4 gigabytes. Somehow. Frankly, I'm disappointed in, but not really surprised by, the fact that Dovetail has chosen to make yet another route that's less than 50 miles long. It's just another thing I've come to expect from TSW alongside the crazy prices. As for motive power, this route includes the MPI F40PH-3C and HSP46 diesel locomotives. These F40s are rebuilds of old F40PH-2C locomotives, originally built in 1987 and 1988 by EMD, while the HSP46s were built by Motive Power Inc. in 2013 and 2014. Only 40 examples of this design were built, and MBTA is the sole operator. To me at least, this thing looks like a bizarre hybrid of the General Electric P42DC and Siemens ALC42 Charger, 2 locomotives that TSW is sorely lacking. Besides the locomotives, you also get the single-decker BTC3 coaches and CTC3 cab car along with the double-decker BTC4D coaches and CTC5 cab car. These double-deckers are fairly modern, having been built between 2012 and 2014 by Hyundai Rotem, while the older single-decker stock was built in 1987 and 1988 by Messerschmitt Bölkow Blohm. The F40PH-3C and single-decker coaches were reused from the older Boston Sprinter DLC of 2021, while the HSP46 and double-decker coaches are new additions to the game. We finally have some much-needed variation on the MBTA rail scene, even though the amount of new rolling stock isn't as big as I would have preferred. And if Dovetail were to make another MBTA route, my initial suggestion is for one of the lines out of Boston north for a change, complete with the GP40MC as well, or maybe have it set in the 80s or 90s with an original condition F40PH-2C. As for the time period of the Boston Sprinter and Worcester routes, they're both set in 2019. I dare say that's so Dovetail could just reuse the existing Boston South to Boston Back Bay section, without having to bother putting in the effort to update its time period. No suitable Amtrak rolling stock is included to recreate the Lakeshore Limited, which is a service that runs from Chicago, Illinois to Boston or New York City. The service even calls at Worcester, Framingham and Boston Back Bay before arriving at Boston South, and regardless of whatever reason Dovetail may have for not including the Lakeshore Limited, its absence on this route is still disappointing. The rolling stock on this route, so that's both the HSP-46 with double-deckers and F40PH-3C with single-deckers, feature ATC and ACSES safety systems, but these are disabled by default, thus providing an, in my opinion, less annoying experience than what you get on the M7 and M9 electric multiple units down on the Long Island Railroad. Interestingly, the HSP-46 also has an automatic engine start and stop system, where the prime mover shuts itself down after 3 minutes if the throttle and reverser are left in idle and neutral respectively. The only other US locomotive with an auto-start feature that I remember is the Norfolk Southern AC44C6M, of all things. On first impression, I didn't think the HSP-46 sounds were horrible, just decent. The horn sounds weirdly similar to the New Jersey Transit ALP45DP NTS Classic, provided that you've got Fanrailer's sound mod for the ALP45DP installed. Here's a demonstration of that locomotive's horn, followed by one from the HSP-46. Driving the HSP-46 is an unusual experience. Despite her use on busy stop-start commuter services, her acceleration is very slow, and you often have to put the throttle straight into notch 8 when pulling away from the station. Driving from the cab car end has no effect on the locomotive's acceleration. As for the brakes, I don't know how accurate they are, but I think they're neither too strong nor too weak, and they don't take too long to release. As for the sounds on the F40PH-3C, some of them have been updated for the MBTA Commuter version, but in her default state with no mods, she still uses the old prime mover audio that was reused from the Caltrain F40PH-2 CAT. On the plus side, the new horn sounds much better than what we had on the original Boston Sprinter version. I didn't bother playing the scenarios, but I noticed that at least 2 of them are named after songs by a band that was actually called Boston. You just had to make that reference, didn't you, Dovetail? In any case, the scenarios are called More Than a Feeling and Peace of Mind. I didn't have much of an opinion on the Peace of Mind song, but as for More Than a Feeling, I think it's so boring and overrated that it could give Toto's Africa a run for its money. In timetable mode, you get 57 playable services for the HSP46, 57 for the F40PH-3C, 42 with the CTC3 cab car leading, and 51 with the CTC5 cab car leading. Some services start or terminate at Framingham, while most go all the way to Worcester, and depending on your stopping pattern, it usually takes between 70 and 90 minutes to complete the full route. Additional playable services are available for the Amtrak Acela and ACS 64 if you own the Acela and Boston Sprinter add-ons, which cost $33.11 and $43.59 respectively. But these are only empty stock workings in and out of Boston South. You can use the route hopping feature to get over to Boston Sprinter, and then the Amtrak trains are drivable in passenger service as far as Providence, Rhode Island. Unlike the Boston to Providence route, which only had static CSX layers, the Framingham and Worcester line actually features playable freight services. These layers require the following 5 add-ons: Santa Patch Grade, BNSF SD70 ACE, Sherman Hill, Horseshoe Curve, and Cajon Pass. I don't have Sherman Hill, Horseshoe Curve, or the farcical BNSF SD70 ACE, nor do I have any intention of ever buying those add-ons. In any case, the total cost of the add-ons required for MBTA Commuter's freight layers, plus the MBTA route itself, is a staggering $253.74 NZD at full price if you were to buy the add-ons on Steam. Besides Boston South and Boston Back Bay, another station whose name I recognise is Newtonville, even if only because it was featured in a Trains Are Awesome video. This is a rather basic station, if ever there was one, and I'm confused as to why it only has one operational platform. The same goes for the nearby West Newton and Auburndale. In any case, while US trains typically run on the right-hand track, those on the Framingham and Worcester line sometimes have to cross over to the opposite side if they need to stop at a station with only one platform. The passenger information screens used on MBTA Commuter look much nicer than the inaccurate design used on Boston Sprinter, but these newer screens are actually reused from the extended Long Island Railroad or Antelope Valley line. Meanwhile, a giant version of the old PIS can be seen above the freeway at Lansdowne. Why it's been placed here is anyone's guess. As one might expect from a Dovetail Games product, there are still some annoying issues present throughout the new MBTA route. These include, but are not limited to, the locomotive's headlights being way too bright, especially at night time, single-decker coaches displaying the wrong numbers, generally weird lighting at Boston South, the new rolling stock seemingly not layering onto Boston Sprinter, and this little bit of shrubbery phasing through a shelter at Wellesley Square. Thinking back to the single-decker coaches, the BTC3s should be numbered in the 500 series, and the CTC3 cab cars should be in the 1500 series, not 800 and 1800 respectively. There are patches on the TrainSim community websites that fix the single-decker numbers and headlight issues, but the latter only applies to the F40PH-3C, and in any case, these fixes should have been done by Dovetail themselves. As for the route's performance, I thought it was below average on my end, usually hovering between 60 and 45 frames per second, and sometimes getting as low as 35. In a situation reminiscent of the San Bernardino line, part of which runs in the middle of a freeway, there's another freeway running parallel to the Framingham and Worcester line between Auburndale and Boston Back Bay. But this road is unrealistically quiet in-game, and sometimes you can even see vehicles spawning or despawning right in front of you. And just for the heck of it, here's the complete collection of US commuter rail operators we currently have in TSW. we've got Caltrain, Long Island Railroad, Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, Metrolink, Metro North Railroad, and New Jersey Transit. As for any future additions to this lineup, I would quite like to see any one of the following brought to the game. Coaster, from San Diego to Oceanside in California, Sounder, from Seattle to Lakewood in Washington State, or Sunrail, from Poinciana to DeLand in Florida. Sunrail would be especially interesting to me because A. its schedule is reasonably busy for a US commuter line, with half-hourly services at peak times, and B. it would mean getting to drive the rather unusual MP32PH-Q locomotives, which are ex-Mark GP40WH-2s rebuilt by MPI. If Dovetail were to make another MBTA route in the future, I wouldn't mind seeing one of the subway lines for a change, if they don't end up doing one of the suburban lines out of Boston North. Specifically, I'd want to see the red line from Alewife to Ashmont and Braintree, plus the little extension from Ashmont to Mattapan with its iconic PCC trams. I know the Americans call this type of vehicle streetcar, but I'm used to using the word tram as that's what we call them here in Australia and New Zealand. Overall, I think Dovetail's MBTA Commuter add-on for TSW5 is one of their better US routes. Apparently, the MBTA themselves were very cooperative during the development of this add-on, and I think that's reflected in the game, with well-detailed stations and a decent quality rolling stock, but the route certainly is not without its issues. At the end of the day, I think it deserves a 6.5 out of 10.